Good afternoon, good evening for everybody that's listening to us and watching to us. We have a wonderful webinar today. Today it's about streets, but it is about riders on the streets. Because there is a lot of going on. New trends on logistics, model logistics, fast logistics. What happened with a lot of new vehicles on our streets and our public space? What's happening if you put that button on your cell phone or whatever kind of laptop? You will have a new product soon at your door. But that has a consequence. That has a logic in the system of logistics, but has also an impact on street and how we use it, how it's organized, and how we maybe can benefit from this trend to make the streets and to improve them because we have a lot of problems over there. That's basically where we are talking today in this webinar, and we have a wonderful four guests here. But before of that, just a short introduction about why we are doing this. We do this webinar as part of a project that is funded by the Creative Fund, Creative Industry Fund in the Netherlands, which basically is about the question of this impact on streets. How can we can make street design better? We do that together. I myself, Daniel Casasvaya, and I'm doing this together with Chaco Mo Gallo from New Environments and Catarina Breya Diaz, also from Urban Dynamics. That's a little bit the context of today that we are talking about. So, what's going on? Basically, e-commerce is growing rapidly, maybe in the 20 last years, very fast, but maybe in the future even more faster and more with a lot of consequence in it. Is downsizing really the key on this? Well, we see a lot of, let's say, vehicles going on, little robots, cargo bikes, little vans. What does it mean in a way for the logistics? Because we see new types, but also new kinds of spaces. We are talking about hubs, macro hubs, micro hubs, how we are going to do this in the cities where we are talking about today. And last but not least, all the things come together in what is, let's say, the existing urban fabric, the existing urban space. How can we handle that in this existing streets? Should we adapt things like a bike lane that can be wider? Or how we are going to do this anyway from a public space that is a street or a public space into the private space that is all the buildings? How is this relations? Hopefully, today we are going to open our wings, and that's because of that we invited four really interesting persons here on this webinar. They are going to tell you some insights or of their businesses, their passion, and maybe there is some common sense here. That's sustainability. I heard a lot of the driving force to make logistics sustainable, but also how we live in the cities. Helene, Renaud, Francesca, and Nick will tell you something in short. I will introduce them one by one when I introduce them to speak. I put this in the order of speaking today. So, Elaine Bou de Ongrai, hopefully I pronounce your name good. She is an assistant professor, researcher on this topic from the Vrije Universiteit Brussels and has a lot of to do with, let's say, the network, the logistic hubs. How does it works in the cities and the urban well? And I think she will have some slides, references also, not only from Europe but also from other parts of the world. And we are looking very forward, let's say, to hear your story and your, let's say, insight on this matter. So please, Elaine, share your screen with us and you can start your presentation.
Yes, well, thank you so much for the invitation. And what I would like to do today is indeed talk about this variety and this heterogeneity and these developments in urban logistics, facilities specifically around the world. As I have been doing some research on this topic together with colleagues from the United States, Japan, Seoul, China, based in Brussels, but also based in Paris, where I spent my postdoc not so long ago. So I'm going to share some context and some examples, especially during this 10-minute talk. So just to give some the reason why this topic is so interesting for a researcher focusing on urban logistics and sustainability specifically is that is this starting point of the fact that in logistics and in cities right now there are quite a lot of challenges that we're facing, and I just wanted to share this illustration coming from a World Economic Forum report predicting that vehicles specifically related to e-commerce deliveries will be increasing by approximately 36%, bringing about a lot more traffic for deliveries and congestion. And so these urban logistics facilities, they are really a one way to kind of move towards a logistics system in the city that is more efficient, that is zero emission, and we especially rely on these facilities to be quite central to the urban fabric, to where the demand actually is, which is not the current case. And so this slide kind of shows you different locations where there could be more ideal locations and less. And so the goal is really of these urban logistics facilities to be closer to the demand area so we can reduce transport distances supplying these urban logistics facilities, as you can see here, which is drawn on this slide. Really reducing transport distances by consolidating, and at the same time, these facilities allowing us to move towards vehicles that are more adapted to the city, like cargo bicycles, as we will talk about today, electric vehicles, and so on. And so with a number of colleagues, as I mentioned, we've been working on this topic, kind of trying to track the different developments in different parts of the world. And we've seen this whole variety of different types of uses, different types of buildings, different types of environments as well, where these logistics facilities are popping up and are being developed. And so with the colleagues, we have come to this typology just to have a common language of how to talk about these facilities and these developments. And so I want to focus today on 3 of these different types of facilities: delivery stations, fast delivery hubs, and then the pickup local freight stations. These are the main type of facilities that we see in cities, but they are quite different, or they can be quite different in terms of what kind of logistics activities that they have. So let me just dive into the first one, the delivery stations, that are very much focused on cross-docking. So here there's no storage facility, or there's no storage activities going on. It's just goods coming into the city, being transferred from mostly a larger delivery vehicle to a smaller delivery vehicle. And one of the classic examples that you see in European cities, especially, is the transformation of underground parking spaces and parking spaces for that. I just wanted to show you some pictures that I actually took this morning during a visit of this hub in Brussels of Furbies. And so they use a parking facility to do the deliveries for Amazon in this case, using small electric vehicles, cargo bicycles. And so you can really follow the operations here a little bit from the vehicles waiting for the delivery truck to arrive, the truck arriving then with all the parcels, and then the parcels being transferred to the smaller vehicles. And so it's an interesting development, especially given that a lot of cities are trying to demotivate car ownership, leading to parking spaces, and especially underground parkings that are used in a lesser way than before, creating in this way with logistics a new opportunity for these spaces. This one is a special type of parking space, given that it's on the ground floor. Most are on the below levels, which are also used a lot. But we can also think of other ways of how to have these delivery stations for cross-docking in the city. And a really nice example that I wanted to show you is this one from Paris, where Ecolotrans, a food delivery company, is making use of a space that has been redeveloped by Sogaris, a French logistics real estate company. And so what they have done is really use the spaces. You can see the top structure is the périphérique road around the city of Paris. So we're really like near the heart of the city, but this type of space under a ring road like that is not really used for anything interesting. And so this way of redeveloping this kind of space that no one is really interested in, but it's still very close to the heart of the city, is a really interesting example of how we can think about these delivery stations as well. These were examples that I've been giving that are quite small, a few square meters in a parking space up to 800 square meters, the example in Paris. But they don't necessarily have to be very small to be logistics facilities in urban areas. And an interesting design that I wanted to share here, I did a case study and a research visit to New York City not so long ago, and I talked to a bunch of people involved in this space as these logistics facilities are really developing in the heart of the city, a lot in Brooklyn, in the Bronx, even in Manhattan, in a way that is maybe not the best integration in the urban fabric. So this design is an alternative to what is kind of going on at this point. It's a building that is multifunctional, multi-use. You see multimodal as well, as the intention is here to use the waterway to cross the delivery traffic from Brooklyn to Manhattan. And it's really a nice design and a way to think about how these logistics facilities could look like, even if they're not small and tiny and micro as the other examples I've given. But so far, I've really focused on the function of cross-docking. But logistics used to be, and especially warehouses, when we think about facilities, used to be focused a lot on storage. And so with when thinking about how these facilities could introduce storage activities in the city center, what pops up immediately is what we have seen this in the last few years emerge and then die again, the quick commerce trend with Getir as one of the examples. And so not necessarily a good example, right? There was a lot to do about this. The way that this was executed did have lots of challenges in terms of urban livability, sustainability, and so on. But essentially what these dark stores is what they were called, these logistics facilities were focused on was very much on storage. Now, there are other examples of how this storage function can be integrated into the city. And I'm giving here another example of Paris, where, again, the same company called Sogaris, they're really into innovation in urban logistics. And they have developed, again, an old parking space that wasn't used anymore. This was an automated parking space. And the idea is of this parking space, and you can see they have 6 levels below, is really to offer storage space for all the different types of shops that are located in this area, in the heart of Paris, in the Marais area, for a place for them to store their goods in order to reduce the necessity of being delivered and being supplied multiple times per week or even multiple times per day. So this storage function does really fit as well into this ambition of cities to become more sustainable in their logistics activities as well. And then I wanted to give an example of Tokyo. This is a storage facility near the port. It's very close to the residential areas as well, but as you can see, it's quite the buffer between the two is quite clearly marked. And this is a storage facility being made use of by multiple tenants. So the multiple tenant model is also something that we see less in Europe, but more in Asian cities, and also used for storage, making the storage capacity very close to where the demand is. And then last few examples are the very smallest, most micro facilities that we see in cities. These are more the pickup locations and freight stations. So everywhere where people can go as an alternative to their home to pick up the orders that they made online. This is an example of this pictures that my colleague from Shanghai took, and we see various alternative looks, but quite similar in the cities where we live, in European cities as well, and even moving towards a more automated system with lockers. And these are pictures from the city where I live, where bpost, the Belgian postal operator, has been playing around with this model of mobile lockers and lockers that can be adjusted in terms of location, in terms of size, and so on. So this was just an overview to give you some of the variety that we are seeing. And I look forward to discussing more about this interesting topic with all of you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Elaine. A very nice overview about, let's say, what an hub and all this logistics can do. And of course, there's a lot of degree and a lot of space to improve this things, how to integrate this thing. But the example of how to reuse an existing parking place should be an interesting thing, especially if we can reuse a little bit of cars into this urban center. So you have maybe a win-win situation there. Who knows?
Exactly.
Who knows? Who knows? Okay, thank you very much, Alain. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. The second speaker today will be Renaud Sarancin. He is from Urbike. And he is the head of consulting department over there. But he has also a research background as he obtained his PhD in engineering science at the Université Libre de Brussels. So Renaud will hopefully say something about how this relation about new logistic and of course everything about you Urbike, but also a little bit more now, and the relation of cities. We are really looking forward to your story. So please share your screen and start your presentation.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, for the next 10 minutes, I will give you a quick word about Urbike, our psychologistics company that was originally based in Brussels, and now we spread the word and the Urbike model to Ghent and Leuven since last year, with this nice objective of transforming last mile logistics in Belgium in order to accelerate the transition to more sustainable and livable cities. So as you most probably know, most recent studies in Europe have shown that the potential of cycle logistics is huge in terms of last mile transition, while we think that 1 in 4 deliveries could be made by bike today in most of the European cities. So this is the theoretical potential, but when we look at the reality in Brussels, we are far beyond that, while we estimate that less than 1 out of 100 deliveries are actually made by bike in Brussels. So we can see these numbers in 2 ways to see that there is still a lot of potential to grow in terms of psychologistics, while the theoretical potential is quite tremendous. But others could see that actually there is probably some constraints that make that psychologistics is not as developed as it could. And if we focus on the reasons of why psychologistics is not that far in Belgium, actually, we can focus on 2 main factors that determine to us the performance of last mile distribution models, which are the density, which are more or less the number of addresses that you will deliver on a territory, and the efficiency of the logistics operations and activities. So when we want to improve the density, we may decide to use vehicle with high loading capacity that cargo bikes don't really offer. And it refers to the urban hubs, because if you use vehicle with low loading capacity, you will have to go back and forth to the hub to refill the vehicle, and you want to limit that distance. So the location of the urban hub is really important when we discuss about density. And then efficiency, it refers more to the load breaks. If you had one link in the logistic chain, you want to improve every load break in the chain so that and reduce the time spent during the load breaks, so that it won't affect too much the efficiency of the activities. And then we may be efficient by sharing some standards, physical and digital standards, and by improving, obviously, the transport and parking times during the logistics activities. And at Your Bike, we strongly believe that cycle logistics may be a nice response that could both improve the density and the efficiency of the last mile distribution model if we use the proper tools and the proper models. So 6 years ago, we have founded this company with the objective to be totally dedicated to cycle logistics as a last mile delivery company. But we like to define ourselves as an accelerator of change in last mile distribution, because we are not only switching one vehicle, mainly the van, by a cargo bike, but we really try to integrate the logistic chain on last mile logistics in order to transform and to improve the whole system. So we have a model based on 3 main pillars. The first one being the use of innovative solutions to boost cycle logistics. And in particular, we use trailers and the bicylift trailers designed by a French company called Fleximodal, which is the only trailers on the market able to lift, load and transport a Euro pallet by bike. So I was speaking about sharing standards, and the Euro pallet is the main standard in logistics chain, so that being able to transport a Euro pallet by bike is a strong step forward to connect cycle logistics very efficiently to conventional logistics. And because we are sharing a standard, able to load up to 200 kilograms on one trailer, which improve the loading capacity of a cargo bike, we can, on the same trailer, use a wide variety of transport modules, such as roll containers to transport some waste of some very large parcels. We can use parcel containers to transport them with a lot of safety and protection to the rain, for example, and isothermal containers or workbox modules for other activities than transport and delivery. And all those trailers share the same lift and go mechanism of the bicyclists, which is very, very efficient, and then make the load breaks very short and competitive. But we are not using a nice engineered solution because they are well designed, but because they allow us to really integrate the logistic chain, as I said, and then it allows us to rethink the distribution models and to use the best vehicles where it will be the most performing. So usually we are using large capacity vehicles such as trucks or even boats on the canal in Brussels to move the goods on long distance and then to distribute them in the city. And then we are using cargo bikes for the last mile deliveries from local micro hubs, from where the parcels are sorted and dispatched on different runs, or it's still a dream, but we are pushing to that. We would like to deploy the containerization model, while the containers could be filling outside the cities and directly delivered in micro hub, ephemeral or mobile micro hub, and then delivered by cargo bikes. Then the second pillar is obviously the use of IT, information management, to automatize what we can so that we can deal with a large amount of flows, but I won't go too deep into that. But when we refer to standards, it's also digital standards. We need to share information very efficiently between actors so that the quality of service could be the highest. And the third pillar of Your Bike is that we are not only shifting the last mile logistics from an ecological point of view, but we really try to re-enhance the status of bike courier and to improve the social working condition as a rider in Brussels. And for that, we are organized as a cooperative company with a participatory governance. And our company is rooted in social economy, meaning that we prefer to respect the workers rather than sharing benefits to shareholders. But it's a specific topic that I won't really detail in this presentation, but just remember that when you respect your workers, you make them all proud and very happy, and then it improves mechanically the quality of service as a logistics operator. So that at Urbike, we are offering a wide range of services, the first one being the delivery, but we have 3 other services which are quite important and which make us quite atypical in the ecosystem of last mile logistics. So speaking about delivery, today we deliver about 6,000 parcels per month, mostly on B2B, as partner of main transport companies to make last mile deliveries of parcels or light pallets. But we also deliver more and more technical parcels, being, for example, parcels of wholesalers companies for the building industry. So we often deliver on work zones, as you can see on the slides. And we deliver technical parcels such as temperature controlled one, being fresh foods for B2B, or pharmaceutical products, which are quite technical parcels to get delivered. And for every kind of parcels, we have a specific physical solution, isothermal containers, insulated blankets that we put on the parcels that allow us to deliver very efficiently, thanks to the cargo bags and the fact that we are really few affected by the traffic and the infrastructure and the local policy in terms of mobility. But we have the technical solution that allow us to respect the standards and the legal regulation for the transport of pharmaceutical products, for example. And then we have a few B2C activities, mainly with companies that consider that our service comes with high quality and then that are able to pay for that, obviously. And then a small focus on the other activities of Urbike in this presentation. First one, the consulting. So offering a last mile delivery service to companies is a good solution to transform the city. But when it's not always feasible, we offer them a support and an expertise to allow them to transform their own activity internally. So, for example, we've helped bpost, the national postal company, or Decathlon, the sportive brand with a brand shop, a sport shop in all across Europe, to develop their own delivery service internally. And for that, we are really analyzing the distribution model. We make feasibility studies, and then we train the people in the companies so that they can learn the job of last mile delivery drivers. And sometimes with the consulting activities, we are exploring and analyzing the other aspect than the delivery, meaning the hubs, the location of the urban hubs, the shared space, the different sizes, and so on, which is very, very important for last mile deliveries. We analyze sometimes some new segment of delivery. So, for example, the reverse logistics, we may be very, very important in the next coming years because we need to collect more waste and to be better at collecting waste and using the waste as resources in the future. And for that, local logistics solution may be very, very helpful and integrated in the city, so that we are exploring this type of segment. And finally, we are more and more helping companies on intermodality and intermodal scenarios. For example, we've made an important study with the Port de Bruxelles, so the Brussels haven, to analyze the potential of intermodal scenarios from inland waterways to green last mile logistics, thanks to the use of small containers that are shipped on a boat and then loaded on cargo bags for the last mile deliveries. And another aspect of our consulting activities are the trainings of companies that want to change their vehicles for their own business activities, not being only transport and deliveries, in order to make that shift to zero emission vehicles and to do their jobs on newer vehicles well adapted to the urban constraints. So during the last 3 years, thanks to a fund from the EFRO Urban Innovative Action Initiative, we've conducted the cargo bag project in the Brussels region with a wide range of a wide consortium, during which we've supported more than 250 companies, from the very large ones, such as Proximus of the Kone lift maintenance company, to very small companies such as plumbers, electricians, local shops, or even public authorities for the cleaning of the street, for example. And we help them changing their models from a van or a car model to a bike model. And then we help them with specific advice on the vehicle, on the change of the operational model, and so on and so on. And the results were very, very positive. And when I was saying that 25% of the deliveries could be made by bike, for the professional journeys is one out of two moves that could be made by bike in the cities. So the potential is even higher for this kind of businesses. So the potential is huge, and we really try to make a change in Brussels and in Belgium to change that. And what we can spread as a world is to join the peloton and to be part of this quite enthusiastic journey.
Thank you very much, Renaud. Very nice to have this insight and this kind of complexity that you mentioned on this chain and the standardization. That is, of course, really important, how to adapt, but also make use of smart things that are already in the logistics system. Just a really short question to you, because you are and you started your story, but you end also the story with the potential of 25%. Do you have some numbers about how many people are already in this 1% delivering of cargo bike are working nowadays? With other words, if we have to scale it from 1% to 25% in let's say the bike cargo, it means also that a lot of more people are will have to work in that sector, so right? Do you have numbers on that, or?
Yes, we've made a study with the National Federation of Psychologistics in Belgium, the BCLF, and I think that today about 200 people are working, 200 FTE, full-time equivalent, are working on the last mile logistic field. Not only riders, but dispatchers, people at the hub, people to actually run the company, and sales people and so on. So
in the Brussels area?
In Belgium.
In Belgium, okay.
Yeah, but most of them are obviously in Brussels. Psychologistics in Belgium is mainly in the big cities, even if we see some small-scale initiative in rural areas, and where there is some things to do, maybe more related to services than logistics, but still the potential of conversion is quite important into the reals.
Okay, very good. So that's also good for to employ people in the future. And nice addition, Bernard. Thank you very much for your presentation. The third person, we have Francisca. She is COO from Food Logica, and is also as a consultant in sustainable issues workable. And she one of the driving force, at least as he's dealt, it's, let's say that Food Logical has a lot of elements that where she was busy with is about research with food and logistics. So we are really looking forward to your let's say presentation, Francisca. So you can share your screen with us and tell your story to the audience. Thank you. Share
So,
it.
hello everybody. Very happy to be here today with you. I will explain a little bit the history of Full Logica, starting from a research background, which is also my background. So it will be more a chronological story of how the study of the local food system developed into a solution, which developed into many solutions and many ideas about how to make the city more sustainable. Everything started many years ago when with Cities Foundation, we were looking into food systems, and we realized that there is nothing easier than learning, than thinking about the future by learning from the past. So if you want to imagine a future that is more sustainable, where cars are not there and where, for example, plastic is not there, there is a very easy way to do it, is to research a period in history when these two elements were not there. And that gives you a lot of ideas, very practical ideas on how things were organized. And this was the time when we started a market, which was called the Old Amsterdam Food Tour and Food Market, where we started to look at all the design of the city center of Amsterdam, how basically the whole city was developed to transport, store, and commercialize food at the beginning. First from the inland, and then from, of course, globally with the West Indian company from all over the world. So it was quite a lot of history that now can be also seen in many musea of the city, but it was a long exploration of how food was transported via waterways and stored with very sustainable solutions back in the days. This developed into a research of which were the innovations at the time. I'm talking about around almost 10 years ago now. And the research was about the global urban food system problem and its inequalities in terms of how many few players were controlling the not only logistics, but many flows in this system. And we wanted to look into the city of Amsterdam and see who was working on innovative solutions. So we did a very nice analysis, which ended up also in a documentary, which is on Vimeo right now, about the logic of food, it was called. And we were featured in an exhibition in the Center of Architecture, where we did this analysis and we showed where the innovation was and which aspect of the food system we were taking into consideration. It was very interesting because we started to think circular. I like that previously was mentioned that now that, so even if it's only 1%, but the amount of deliveries by bike are increasing consistently year after year, and return logistic is a logistical issue and is also a circularity issue. And this has been mentioned before, that is something that we still are trying to solve nowadays. So what we did, we came up with an idea which was called voedsellogica in Dutch. Sorry for my Dutch. Where this bike would solve every problem of the food system. It would it would collect food, it would deliver it to restaurants, it would get food scraps from restaurants, bring them back to a hub, and at the hub help local farmers to also exchange food waste and all sorts of activities related to it. Of course, nothing really happened with this idea because, well, once you start working in logistics, you realize that simplicity is the key. And that was when Jessica, the co-founder of Full Logica, came into the scene, and she had more of a business background, while I came, of course, from a very, let's say, research and system-oriented background. she said, no, let's try to do things simple, and let's develop a bike that or a solution that helps the local food system to get more sustainable on a very simple level. So we took a shipping container from China, we refurbished it, we put some solar panels on it, so we created a independent system. We placed it in the city of Amsterdam. We put 2 bikes with a box on it, and the idea of the box was already to be able to be at least as big as a pallet. So I think we all have the same approach, but this was a very, let's say, initial design solution. And so we thought, okay, this is a revolution in the food sector and in the transport sector. This is 2015. But of course, charging electric bikes with a solar panel in Amsterdam was not the most smart idea, because of course there is not much sun. So we soon positioned the bike in the food center. And this, I like to underline that this, of course, is a solution that has several implications. You have the fact that you are located in a very strategic area. So it's an area that is in between the highway and the city center. And that has been mentioned before, that this is something that logistics tend to do, especially last mile logistics hub cannot be too far from the city center, especially if you use bikes. Otherwise, you lose all the competitive advantage you have in being very fast in reaching your destinations. And of course, commercially, we were in the food center where most of the wholesalers and food companies were. So immediately we became a little bit more, let's say, market savvy, and we started this idea to have many hubs and have the shortest possible routes by bike. And that was, of course, an experiment that we proposed to a group of investors that believed in us at the beginning, with then the ambition to reach many countries of the world. This developed into a more professional company that was focusing only on refrigerated food. For us, having active cooling has always been something very necessary from hygiene conditions point of view. And we were the first ones that had, let's say, to put it simply, a fridge on a bike. And then the company went much bigger year after year. And the idea was, in fact, what has been mentioned already by in the previous presentations, to have this hub where big volumes arrive. And then we started growing, and we started realizing that actually a bike sometimes is not the most efficient solution, especially when the cost of the drivers is your highest cost. So we started getting a little bit bigger vehicles with the idea that every vehicle is electric, has active cooling, and we comply to hygiene regulations. So we developed our hubs with several services that are connected to food. So Foodlogica is, of course, Foodlogica is really a company that focuses on the sector. And we also developed with COVID very quickly. We started collaborating with a very good software company to be able to provide a B2C food delivery, home delivery, grocery delivery, distribution, customer experience that was extremely similar to a parcel delivery, because that's what people want nowadays. Somebody delivered at their something delivered at their doorstep with completely refrigerated in a very short period of time, and on time, of course, for a very cheap amount of money. That's the challenge. As I said, I hope you can see this video. Yes?
Yes. We can only see it. There is no sound. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, this sound wasn't there. Okay. Yes. Yes. So, well, eventually, Full Logica, as you can see, as you have seen in the video, we grew in terms of volumes that we are delivering. And we also grew in terms of places where we were delivering. Also in Paris and Milan and the whole Randstad area, basically. And eventually what we are realizing more and more now, because we are competing and collaborating with the large food wholesale companies, that having many hubs is not exactly a smart solution in terms of efficiency, because you have to man a hub, and every hub is another line hold, is another cost that you have to go through. So there are a lot of implications in this whole idea of the sustainable food delivery. And eventually, in my opinion, what this comes up with down to is the fact that we should try to create big place hub where many companies collaborate instead of competing, and share the last mile products. Because I started with bike myself. I see that there are so many points of deliveries in the same street, the same day, operated by so many different players. And even if we use electric vehicles, eventually this is not sustainable from a livability perspective. So I think this maybe brings me back to my background in urban development and sustainability. But we all know sustainability, luckily, is not only about cleaning the fine dust from our environments, but is also about creating the most livable and the smartest way of organizing the flows. And what I see and what I notice is that the highest cost of delivery is the first parcel. The first parcel is usually very expensive. Every second parcel, basically, you don't spend anything. And every company basically spends a lot of money on delivering one parcel or two parcels, especially when it comes to B2C. I find this, like if I would, put myself back on a more systemic changing or systemic thinking, I would definitely advise more aggregation of flows rather than diversification of the service, because this is what happened in the last 10 years. We all came up with amazing ideas which are super innovative, but maybe it's time to aggregate and create more efficiency now on a larger scale. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Francesca. Very nice that you share also your critical notes on this matter, because at the end, a lot of things we start to do some journey, and then in the middle, all the logistics and all the systems and there are really good answers and logics and whatever. But at the end, what matters is, in a way, can we make the system not so only efficient in an economical point of view, but also sustainable point of view. So we have to look to the whole picture, and that is very, very, very interesting how you say it. It's also let's say one thing that I think we don't have to be really smart on it, but if somebody making let's say online buying, whatever it's food or electronic or whatever, we are completely crazy about how many companies are in the sector and how many parcel lockets we have to go, or to one shop, or maybe it's one to doors, and all the system in a way. Maybe we need also some kind of digitalization in standardization, and maybe the hubs and the things. So things comes together, But okay, we are here also to discuss this for the next future, and maybe architects and urban planners, as we can help also a little bit in that complex puzzle in it. Thank you, Francesca, for your insights. We have last but not least Nick Wills. He's from, yeah, you are online here still. The internet is not failing, so that's very good. He's chief office of Komodo Bikes. That is now focusing really on the cargo bike itself. And seeing, let's say, the inside and outsides on how to manage, in a way, a cargo bike as a Komodo. Nick, floor is yours. You can share the presentation.
So my name's Nick Welsh. I'm the CEO and founder of Komodo Bikes, and we discovered some time ago that we were very keen that micromobility was a key asset. And what I've done, we set up the company really with the aim of reducing the cost and environmental impact of last mile delivery in urban spaces. But that's threefold. That isn't just reducing the pollution and congestion. It's also reducing the environmental impact of actually creating the product in the first place, and then making it more accessible. So those elements I'll talk about over the next few minutes, just so you get an idea of why Komodo Bikes came about and what we're now trying to do. The problem we've already discussed, and I think in many respects amongst this forum and anybody who zooms in, it will be all about the pollution, congestion and road safety are very apparent. But there is a slowness in terms of the take-up of cargo bikes as terms of last mile distribution systems. We amongst ourselves, I think, can see the logic, and from the brilliant presentations that preceded me, it was very apparent that there's a huge amount of energy and understanding to the logic of them. But the uptake is slow, and certainly in the UK, and I'll talk about my UK experience probably, and UK lags Europe in many, many ways. But why? Well, partly it's infrastructure. We don't have the infrastructure, certainly not yet in our major cities, and there's habit, and there's weather, of course. United Kingdom famous for its rain. But I think there's the three other things are more important. One is accessibility. And certainly the rideability of some of the cargo bikes when you put large loads on them is difficult if you're not an experienced rider. There's certainly been a lack of innovation. Certainly there is a lack of UK production in terms of bikes. Europe is far ahead. So pollution is a key issue and something which we face across the country. And we know that we can drive it down. And there are ways we can do it. But the bike itself and the solution, I would suggest, hasn't changed for probably 100 years. Both these pictures, I think, are taken from about, one is 1920 and one is 1905. If I compare them to the sort of bikes out there, and no criticism of these bikes, but you can see design is not really changed a great deal. The business case, however, for running cargo bikes is very apparent, and I know Francesca and Renard talked in great detail about the challenges and getting the ability of bikes on the road to run as we want them to. What we've designed is something called the Komodo bike, and the key to this is that it has a 600-litre capacity. It's very rideable, two wheels at the front. It's very stable, and it's very accessible, we believe, to any rider. The aim is to encourage small businesses to start to take up different forms of transport. The key to it is not just the styling of it, but it's also the application of motorsports technology to a bike. So the suspension, the steering, and so on are all adaptations. And the team that's worked on this are all Formula One engineers, and they all live within the Silverstone area, the heart of the British motor racing industry. The bike itself allows the rider to see around it and ride it as a bike, which allows them the accessibility and the safety of the bike when people are using it. So as I said at the beginning, we wanted to make an accessible and rideable bike, and that has been in design for over the last 2 years. We wanted to join the debate and shift the UK view in terms of using micromobility for last mile delivery. Francesca made the point about there's still space to go in terms of encourage, and there's still amalgamation perhaps in the industry. But I think there's also an understanding of the cost of last mile delivery and the requirement to use other forms of transport. But the third thing we've been trying to do is create probably the most sustainable bike available. Our scope 1 and 2 emissions, if that's a common language to you all, will rise with production, and that's the cost of running a factory and running an office. They will rise, but we'll hopefully keep those below the rate of increase in production. The key is the scope 3 emissions. And I would say probably the top priority for us is the development of a composite frame. I've put up a table here which gives an indicator of where the majority of steel and aluminium frames are made before they're shipped and assembled to Europe, America, Australia, and other places. And you can see the cost, the CO2 equivalent cost production per kilogram of frame. And if you think a cargo bike's frame weighs about 45 kilos, you start to get the idea of how expensive they are. We've made our frame using flax, which is a naturally occurring material. We've used it using a system called dry weave, which again reduces the energy consumption in producing that. And then we import the flax to the UK and we assemble it in the UK. Flax is already used in the motorsport industry. It's used as and carbon fiber are used as composite materials on motor racing cars. Flax is being used already in the automotive process, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be used in terms of building a bike. The bike itself is a monocoque frame, which means the box becomes part of the structure, so there's no additional weight to that. And we believe we can greatly reduce the the carbon consumption in terms of producing a sustainable cargo bike. It's not just, of course, development of the composite frames. We've aimed to do nose-to-tail sustainability on the bike, which includes everything from using mineral water rather than oil in the hydraulics, using a cork handle grips, for example. By bringing production home, we reduce transport costs, and through life considerations with everything from the battery to the frame itself being recyclable and being part of the purchase contract for the bike itself. So the bike has been developed over the last 2 years, applying motorsport to technology to a bike, which hasn't been done, I don't think, in the concentration that we've done it. It's now out. It's being used on the roads and streets of Manchester. It'll be delivered in London shortly, and we hope it's going to make a contribution to the sustainability of last mile delivery and electric cargo bikes. That's the Komodo. Thank you very much indeed for listening.
Thank you very much, Nick, for your insight and bringing, let's say, these numbers also on the table of one, the production, of course, but also, let's say, the way how cargo bike can contribute to a more sustainable part, or let's say make the logistic in general more sustainable. Of course, maybe a little critical note, but that's some part of the world anyway, is of course, if we, and that is maybe a starting point for all of you, maybe Nick, for you, as you are the last speaker, but is this 1% going to 25%, as Renault said, as let's say the basic that we can let's say make it more sustainable by using cargo bike? Is it really replacing the standardization, or let's say existing logic, or is it, let's say, a new increasing the logistic in a way, because it became so easy on it, and with that maybe on the vehicle you have a win-win-win, maybe at the end if you have more logistic. How do you deal in that, let's say, paradox of it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think all the speakers would agree that the whole industry is going through a process of consolidation at the moment. there's no one solution that will fit all of the logistic needs. And I think until some of the largest courier companies adopt cargo bikes, we're not going to see a shift in habit. But I think my view is I think we can encourage it by using smaller courier companies and using small businesses to adopt the cargo bike in the first instance. And the people that are using our cargo bike we've been working with for some time, small courier companies and small businesses who recognize the radius of their delivery environment and are worked out that a cargo bike is best for them. So exactly as perhaps using chilled cargo bikes for delivering food stuff, using a Komodo cargo bike for delivering medicines, for delivering last mile, taking them off the larger courier companies, last mile packages, for delivering for small businesses. We're working with a cured meats company. We're working with a whole load of very diverse businesses at the moment who are moving from van to bike. But I don't think the one solution will fit all. And I think the design of transport management systems, coming back really to what Francesca said about the point about amalgamating delivery, at some stage, this consolidation will take place. And I think all of us will play a part in encouraging people to make the right choices.
Thank you, Nick.
Maybe
I can just add to Francisca because she mentioned the location in this center, food center in Amsterdam. I know that in the 90s, this area was sold as a potential urban neighborhood, or let's say a new business district, getting away all the food center. And maybe Ronald, and then I come back to you. Sorry, Francisca. Do you need this kind of huge centers still to have this proximity in the city? How do you see that with your food chain and let's say it's a proximity of food the producers? Maybe you have to
You're mute.
You are mute.
Sorry. I said definitely. I don't think the food center is as big now as it used to be. So a lot of larger companies have been displaced. A lot of production facilities have been displaced. The thing is now there are like 3 or 4 different bike delivery companies there, because of course for a bike delivery company, proximity is everything. That's the only advantage you have, because in the long distance, you're very slow compared to a van. So is what I really like the presentation of Hélène, where she showed in Paris that this company is using underutilized, under the peripheric areas. Those are like solutions that are definitely very organic and very suitable for the way the landscape of last mile companies is now. But I will repeat myself. I think there is a lot of disgregation in the especially B2C market, which is very different than the B2B. I believe the B2C market definitely need some restructuring. But you said, I was mentioning liability of the city, but it's also an economical vision on it, because the less rounds you have, the less money. Like there is nothing as cheap as a round that is not executed. So this goes a bit against, of course, having a bike, because a bike is built on an opposite model. But I believe bikes are very suitable for fast commerce. When it comes to next day delivery, the key for is like both logistical and economical success, in my opinion, which might not be the most, from my experience, is definitely aggregation. So larger volumes.
So large and only the small. Okay. Ronald, you were wanted to say something, but getting back, let's say, to the Brussels situation, you told also that you have now an let's say an important hub in the city, and you wanted to expand in more micro hubs. Is that, let's say, so you have in a way, let's say, being close to the, let's say, delivering addresses, so the consumers in a way, the last. But you have also the, let's say, the logistic behind. Is this also proximity around, let's say, in the food sector? Is it also more local organized, or is that, let's say, all the food is coming from all the world, and how do you operate in those two directions?
So in terms of hub location, as you said, we have to be close to the main roads and highways in Brussels, so that the big transport companies who supply our hubs with parcels can easily access the hub. If we were in the city center, in congestion area, we might not be as attractive as we are today. But then we cannot be too far to the city center and the delivery zone. So there is this area between the city center, and the main roads. So the let's say the borders of the Brussels region. That is the good location for us. We usually say that our main hub has an optimal radius of 3 to 5 kilometers, and 3 is the best and 5 is acceptable. Above 5 kilometers, we know that we won't be profitable and we be less efficient than a van or a thermal vehicle. For the micro hubs, in certain area where the density is very high, we may operate in a 1 to 2 kilometer radius. And in those areas, when you have strong accessibility constraints or bad traffic condition, then we know that we can use cargo bikes very, very efficiently. And even if we have to make a lot of back and forth during the day, because if the density is very big, it's very, very practical. And then, my small comment was that indeed, we have to deal with the other actor of the chain. So we have to think in a more transversal way when we try to shift from a model to another one. And if I think that cyclologistics will put more bike on the streets, because in a way, sometimes we have to deconsolidate a bit, the impact of a bike is not the same as the impact of a van or trucks. We are not discussing as much as I would about externalities. But when a cargo bike delivers a parcel, it improves. I mean, the positive impacts are highest than the negative one. While with a van, we are not improving anything. We are degrading everything in terms of parking space, of accident, as Nick said, pollution, obviously, and so on. So maybe that we will have a bit more vehicle, and still not often. I think that it would be a best impact in total.
Okay, thank you, Renaud. I would like to ask Helene a question in, let's say, in a way, because you showed us many different ways how to store and have the hubs, micro, mega, quite, let's say, creative solutions as well, in a way. In which way is this change? So we have the last mile delivering, but we have also, let's say, something, and it's also mentioned, I can believe that there is also, let's say, if we talk about the food sector, in a way, it's this kind of proximity model that we have in having, let's say, the region and having more local products. Is that also affecting, or see you, let's say, different kind of hub models in that kind of way, that is working at an, let's say, in city or maybe neighborhood level?
Yes. So what we're seeing, kind of parallel and simultaneous at the same time, with this development and this trend in urban logistics, facility development, is also what we're seeing, this revival of the the short chains or the short food circuits. But depends a little bit on, because I know in Italy they call it 0 kilometers, so it depends a little bit on where you're coming from. But yes, so this is definitely something that we're seeing, and as well impacting in the city, having new business models and so on. But what we're seeing there is intuitively what we would think from an environmental point of view, closer production better, right? How the closer the production would be to the consumption, the better. So this is what we would intuitively think. But and I'm not an expert in this field, but there have been studies done that really show that this is actually not necessarily the case. And it's the key factor there is how the logistics is organized, and the big distribution works very efficiently. We all know that, right? The big supermarkets negotiate wonderful contracts. They have big volumes, and in logistics, it all comes down to having this efficiency and these volumes. And so, if we want to make these short circuits and these short food chains work as well, working on this logistics is key, and having an efficient logistics system from an operational and economic point of view and an environmental point of view. So there as well, what we're seeing is, for example, collection points as a way of introducing and making these short chains work in both directions, economical and ecological, but also hubs, for example. And the same way as we have, as the examples I showed of the parking spaces that are used for cross-docking regular parcels, non-food parcels. There are also some examples of how this underground space is being used for storage and cross-docking of foods and local foods. So there's definitely a development going parallel, and I guess that's a good thing, because if we want to make it work, then we have to take logistics into account as well. Yes.
Thank you. I guess this is also about circularity somehow interpret. So to don't make, let's say, the overview less complex.
No.
On this, it's a lot of things. So we are sharing and learning and trying in a way. Thank you for your answer. I think I would like to address a question to you, because you mentioned, let's say, that there's a lack or good infrastructure or bikeable that is, let's say, to bike on it, etc. And as we have this webinar also in a way is riders on the streets. It's our research in a way. We are really curious also to hear from you. It's, let's say, what wishes do you have to make better infrastructure in cities? Is it something that is completely segregated, separate system, or can we also share things with other users of streets? What's your opinion about it, Nick? You're muted.
That's brilliant, because I've got quite a strong opinion, but based on my experience in the UK, legislation and economics are certainly changing the habits that are going to drive long-term logistic growth in urban areas. But despite what we've had is heavy subsidiaries of electric vehicles, and we've had some cycle lanes, but most measures that the British government introduced, and I think elsewhere, have been punitive. So this year, the UK will have 16 cities with congestion or low emission charges. That's over 25% of the UK population living in those environments, which is necessary, but it's a short-term measure, in my view. We need to change habits, and there are further punitive measures applied, including 20-mile-an-hour speed limits in urban areas, zoning, traffic restrictions. And that doesn't encourage an exponential growth in micromobility. And I think it's street design is so important to encourage people to take the new forms of transport. And I think in many ways, many of our local government bodies are slightly frightened about doing so. And I think there are ways to encourage people onto micromobility machines in lots of different ways. There is the collaboration that Francesca talked about But I think even just working at the very lowest level with small businesses and small courier companies, creating a positive environment for them, creating the advantage to them of using micro machines will change the dynamic. But at the moment, we haven't hit that tipping point. And that's the point, I think. And the design of the streets, I think, is probably the most important thing to drive that change.
Thank you for your opinion. And I think also a lot of work to do. I just received a message from Elaine that she has to leave us in a couple of minutes. Maybe, Elaine, you want to, let's say, address also something about the street design matter.
Yes. So you mentioned in the beginning that you're looking at street design from a spatial point of view, but also a temporal point of view. And I thought that was something to bring up here as well, because I mean, we're talking about cities, right? So and when you talk about street design and having the space for all these types of vehicles, all these types of modes, all these types of activities, it's impossible to think of a system where we would have a separate lane for every type of activity and every type of vehicle, or to have a totally conflict-free city. I don't think that is possible, just because cities are what they are, a concentration of activities, people, and so on. But there, I think the temporality really comes in. What we see today, we're not bothered too much by all the trucks in our not the majority of the trucks in our cities, because when they are making their supplies, it's in the early morning when people are not using the shopping streets as they are in the afternoon, for example. And so I think that part, the temporality of it, is so important in street design as well. And it also, I mean, it's on a general level in the city, but it's also on a development of a hub level. And especially when looking at these bigger hubs that are supplied by trucks, multiple trucks a day, that still work with vans, maybe electric vans, but the van is still a van, in terms of space and in terms of accident risks and so on, then I think looking at this temporality and the spatiality of how streets are used is crucial. But there are definitely ways where they don't necessarily overlap. So it's about creating this or finding these like I'm looking for a specific word, but anyway, working with these temporalities as well is one of the solutions, I guess.
So you mentioned in a way this kind of time windows that we have in all these shopping streets, that in the morning you have delivering, let's say, time window, and then you can adapt this kind of things in all the kind of streets. With this now actually it's another thematic about streets, but it's about these school streets that in the morning they open it only for the children and not for the cars. So you have this kind of element. It should be a really interesting thing to think about more on this. Helene, before that you leave, thank you very much for your insight, and we just continue like 10-15 minutes to wrap up this question with the other guests. Thank you very much, Helene.
Thank you for having me.
Renaud, also for you, the same question. The relation with the streets, you are, let's say, have a lot of experience already in Brussels. Does the infrastructure or how the streets are now in Brussels is investing in the last decade or so quite a lot in new bike infrastructure, bike lanes, etc. Also some, let's say, areas that are shared space or more for pedestrian. Probably there is some space also to improve still in let's say in the perspective of your company and your activity, right?
Yes, you're right. Since I would say, most probably 10 years, and it has accelerated during the COVID, actually, as in many cities in Europe. We had a lot of changes in the infrastructure in Brussels, meaning more and more bike infrastructure, and quite well-designed bike infrastructure, I have to say, meaning wider ones, separated bike lanes. So it encouraged a lot of people riding a bike rather than taking their cars. And it obviously impacts positively our activities. But I think that the best development for us are the shared space and the streets with low speeds and then low traffic. And I quite agree with Helene, meaning that we have to share spaces. And we don't have only to decide where we want some vehicles, but also when we want some vehicles in the streets. And you cannot ask a supermarket to get delivered by 20 cargo bikes. It makes no sense. But you can arrange your local policy to allow a big trucks to deliver these huge supermarkets in the early morning or quite late during the day, or even during the night if we have some solution to avoid some noises. But I strongly believe about share space, and I think that today we have some improvement, more especially on the micro design. So, meaning the curb differences between the road and the bike lane. Sometimes for the wheels is not very good. It makes some wheel break. For the parking areas, we have very short parking time, but sometimes we don't really know where to park on the bike lane, on the road, and so on. So some improvement. And the last one is on the urban hubs. We need more and well-located hubs to develop our activities. And most often, we were referring about changing the functions of the old parking, but we have a lot of underground parking in Brussels. And for us, it's not that efficient as a micro hub, because we need some trucks or large vans to deliver goods in these parking lots. And when the height is not high enough, the trucks cannot access the parking and then cannot deliver the hub there. So it's part of the answer, but we really have to think about the logistic function behind those spaces.
Okay, thank you. I think you said a lot of things about a really curb, really micro into the system. So I think it's all sense. And of course, I think what is mentioned, you mentioned it as a parking, but at the end it's, let's say, the space wherein you stop your cargo bike, and then you put it out of and then go to the consumer. That's, let's say, shifting point is really important as well when the big vans arrive and then go to the cargo. So those things is on working on it. Thank you, Francisca. You located in Amsterdam as at least for a lot of people in Europe, seeing as the bike heaven city. Is that so fantastic in Amsterdam, or do you see also there, let's say, improvements? As we know that we already have this 30 kilometers of our implementation. Does that bring, let's say, air into the system of logistic, or is it, how do you see this?
Very, very efficient. I think it's a very good solution. I think Amsterdam has been a very progressive city in the past. Making radical choices that eventually now are very suitable both for livability, but also from a commercial perspective. We have a ridiculous amount of transport bike companies at the moment operating in the city. I do think there are, of course, there is a history of a city, and not every city is at the same level of development. As you said, Amsterdam already has the whole Netherlands has a ridiculous infrastructure and connectivity when it comes to bikes is amazing. I have Logica is also in Milan. I never dare to start with a bike in Milan. Some bike lanes are being introduced now, but they are not connected. They're very scattered, and I find it extremely unsafe for people to drive a bike in a city like that. I think there are levels of implementation and ideas that need to be regarded, and Paris is developed a very connected system, but is only covering a very partial portion of the city. I find Brussels extremely, they did an amazing work in the last 10 years. And I think you guys are enjoying that a lot. And also from a pedestrianization perspective, it's been very radical in their own way. I believe I concur with the idea of having separate timing and not only separate flows. But I will reinforce my point about the aggregation of flows. I think that's as a unfortunately or fortunately, let's say the market doesn't the market allows the variety of operators, which is very good. But at the same time, maybe it's the institutions or the policymakers that have to look at the numbers and look at the timing of delivery and the type of flows and provide the right infrastructures and the right soft structures to create an efficiency that is of a much more systemic level.
Just a question about that, because with that you plea in a way, let's say, for a kind of central, let's say, from the public sector regulation on this,
yes.
right? And
yes,
in which way that can be different, but I guess it's about the digital platform in a way, how to communicate, but also the physical, right?
Yes, it has to, of course, it has to be connected in both cases, otherwise there is no efficiency. And it's a decision that would definitely help many companies to cut incredibly on, because last mile is very expensive. It's the most expensive segment of the whole journey. And so it would incentivize many companies to move or to operate in a specific area. But it's something that nobody dare to do, because of course you really need to analyze all the data and you need to have a very, again, radical approach towards it.
Are some cities experimenting in this? Do you have examples? Or?
Yes, but not from a regulatory perspective. So there is again another massive hub coming up here or coming up there. There is again a huge distribution center or a lot of like bike hubs coming up. So everyone is investing in software and infrastructures to operate this last mile or to supply the city. But eventually we are all spending the same amount of money and going in the same location with 4 different trucks every day.
And different kind of companies and different kind of hubs and different kind of space. So it's a kind of and it looks in a way that, let's say, when the electricity or let's say the water sewers enter in cities, in the beginning it was also completely private, and then after a while, depending on the cities, it got, let's say, public system in a way. So
and also looking at the past, we didn't touch upon that because we are strongly bike focused in this conversation, but waterways are, well, I think Renaud, you were mentioning that you guys are developing some kind of partnership about this, but waterways have been used in the past to build every city where we basically operate nowadays. And they are very efficient for slow, large volumes. So in Amsterdam, there are some examples and there have been many failures. And most of the success stories are related to construction waste or construction material. So I think that's something that, in my vision, would definitely take away some flows from the streets and put them in an infrastructure that is already there.
But the water, and then also, let's say, regulate or standardization of this whole system, in a way, it's a kind of appeal, let's say, for a city that is maybe watching us to say, hey, let's call these guys and maybe we can help every city on making some system, and maybe you have a win-win-win then later on. Thank you, Francesca. I just of time, but I just want to give all of you just 1 minute, let's say, a giveaway or something that you can say, okay, maybe my question to you is, which question do you have to urban planners and landscape architects? Because we are, of course, really interested in that. Ronald, maybe to start with you, just a short question, critical look to us.
Yes, I love the idea of cooperation, obviously, and shared space. And there is a lot of experiment in sharing hubs and so on. And I was wondering what was the main trends and the best ideas in terms of sharing physical space, maybe to enhance cooperation and then consolidation of flows between actors.
Thank you for the question. I will not answer it all. I cannot do it, but certainly there is intention between share everything and segregate everything. What we do, let's say, with the future design of streets platform is that we say that streets are not only mobility space, but also social and natural space in cities. So this should be also balanced, and delivering should be balanced between, let's say, all the users and all the functions streets should have. So this is the short answer, and maybe I give you later on a more complete answer on it. But thank you for a critical question. It's very interesting. Nick, I don't know if you heard me, but we are in the last round of short questions. And now it's a question I would like to ask you, if you have a question for us, urban designers, architects, landscape architects, how we should improve, let's say, streets. What do you think? There is a kind of technical problems. Francisca, maybe the question the same for you. Do you have any questions for, let's say, urban designers and landscape architects?
Yeah, I think again, I've been focusing so much in the detail and the problems of logistics in the last years that for me, what would be inspiring would be to have a proper data analysis of the flows and a capacity analysis of the infrastructures. That's I mean, I have a background in urban planning, so
okay, right.
I go into the details here as well. But for me, that would be, you know, if you want to really look at the city, I would start from there. So that's not a question, but my question would be, what is the capacity and the demand of this city? And
nice question. That's probably from city to city different, and depending on what are the parameters, but it's definitely an interesting thing. One thing on mobility that we do is, let's say, rather to measure cars, we measure people. So this is a kind of interesting thing in, let's say, the transport of people, but maybe something like that we need also for the goods. It's not only about, well, anyway. Nick, I don't know if you heard the last minutes, but also the question for you. What kind of questions do you have to urban planners and architects?
I was just we have a storm in UK at the moment, which is affecting connectivity. My apologies. But no, I think what you said is exactly that. The urban spaces are spaces to be lived in, not just to deliver through. There is some coordination in London. There's a street I know where they coordinate the goods coming in with the rubbish leaving, and they time it so that only electric vehicles can use the streets when the shops are open. Those sort of micro actions, I think, are really useful. But I think we really need sort of to take the exemplar. There are certain cities, I think, across Europe where they've really embraced this, and I'd love to see those ideas reflected more broadly. The UK is a very congested country, and I think so many of the ideas that have been touched on today, the amalgamation, the use of dark spaces, the use of different forms of transport, different transport management systems, all need to be coordinated and brought together. That's the way the industry is moving. I know that, and I've seen that, but there's much more work to do. So, and my simple point, I think, is I welcome these forums. I think they're fantastic. Every time I come on one, there are new ideas which I can't believe haven't already been adopted. We just have to keep pushing.
Thank you very much also for your insight. The time is running always in this kind of platforms. For that, I have to close the session. I would like to thanks, many thanks for all our guests. So Renaud, Francesca, Nick, Helene. Of course, I would like to thanks as well Giacomo and Caterina that are on the background, and Teresa on the logistics of, let's say, the techniques. Thank you all. For the audience, thank you very much also for listening. I hope you liked it. If you want to know more about this subject, please contact us. We are willing, of course, to talk about this and maybe one of these guests connecting with you. So please keep us informed with your questions, send us things, and for you all guests and colleagues, thank you very much being here with us. For me, it was a pleasure. I learned a lot. I have more questions, of course, than answers, but that's the funny part of research. But hopefully we can make a little step and throwing a little stone in the water that make an effect on the sustainable world. Thank you very much.